James, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you.
Yeah, and you. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Great to have you. I really want to jump in for our listeners now and just go straight back to the beginning of your journey. So just talk us through how you started Robot Mascot and how you sort of developed the company into what it is today.
Yeah, so Robot Mascot originally started life as a brand communications agency. It was founded by my business partner, Nicholas Ruston. He's like a brand guru. I was going to use the word guru. I hate that word. Why would I use that? But yeah, he's a brand expert, shall we say? He's built hundreds of brands across many different sectors, multi-million dollar brands, and started this brand communication agency. Um, I joined a few months later, about 18 months later, as kind of chief operations officer. I come from more of a marketing background. So we first met at brand and design agencies and worked well together. I joined him 18 months into the venture as the operations officer, kind of leveraging the marketing side of my skill set. And brand agencies are tough, right? There's millions of them. You can throw a stone in any major city and you're bound to hit the window of a brand agency. They're everywhere. So having cut through, having a unique proposition, having a niche was really difficult. We were new at business. We were great at the work we did, new at business, didn't really know how to build a business. And over time, we realized that we had a superpower, and that superpower was making complex ideas simple and easy for people to understand. And to cut a long story short, we started applying that to startups seeking investment, mainly because they were clients of ours who were building their brand, and then they wanted to go and raise some investment. And we started with their pitch decks. And investors saw them, investors liked them, they were getting great results, and we kind of thought there's something here, there's something interesting here. Started going to some startup conferences and events and realized that this was a massively growing sector. Investment was rising year on year at an alarming rate, like an incredible amount of money going into these startups. So we thought we need to take advantage of this, and we started an 18-month pivot from a brand communications agency into a niche investor communications agency, applying the same thinking, the same brand-led thinking, but doing it to business strategy, financial strategy, pitch decks for investors, and kind of taking it forward from there, and kind of having that kind of startup consultancy, but with that special sauce being that layer of brand communication. And yeah, sort of been not looked back since, sort of making that step into a niche. It's been a whirlwind since then.
Yeah, it's awesome. For anyone who doesn't know James's story in Robot Mascot, it's such an interesting one because, when you look at even your website, I'd recommend anyone goes to your website, even if they're not looking for investment, because there's so much stuff on there that you can learn from. And the thing that you spoke about there that really resonates with me, and I think you are so well positioned in the market for, is that brand segment, because it is such visually appealing stuff that you do. So how important is the actual brand element and the visuals to an investment deck and an investor that's now, looking at a startup?
Yeah, massively. So brand can be thought about in a few different ways, and you can talk about the brand communication, which is the language you use to explain your value proposition, what you do, what do you stand for, what's your big vision beyond making money. And obviously that stuff's super important to getting an investor to buy into your concept. You've got this incredible concept, it's awesome, but you have to somehow get this third party that's never heard of you, doesn't know what you do, probably has never really thought much about the sector in which you operate, and you've got to convince them that this is an incredible opportunity, and that you're the person to make that happen. So the communication there, the brand communication of selling in that vision, that value proposition, getting people to buy into that and want to be part of it to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, is a really important skill. But you can also think about brand as the visual side, the way it looks, the way it portrays itself visually. And again, that is super, super important because we're all human, even investors. They're not robots, they're humans. They kind of see things through their eyes first. They see the visuals first before they read anything. And you kind of want to look like the billion-dollar business you're promising to become. You want to look like that established brand that owns a place in the market that they can get behind and they can get excited by. And I think it's something like, I think 4 seconds it takes for someone to digest visual information, and we
Yeah.
digest that 10,000 times quicker than words. So like within a few seconds, an investor's sitting there thinking, this looks awesome, tell me more. Or they're going, oh, this looks a bit crap. Like, I suppose I'd better look through the deck just in case I'm missing out on some gold here. And if you've got the psychologically, if the investor is looking at it going, oh, that looks a bit crap, but I suppose I better give it a shot, is in a very different mindset when absorbing all the information you want to share versus the one that says, this looks awesome, I'm excited to sort of jump into this. And it's just those little psychological moments give you that competitive edge that is the difference between your deck becoming a meeting, your meeting becoming investment. And it's playing with those little marginal gains that you need to do to kind of be in the elite group that actually close a round of capital.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it makes me think of something like Dragon's Den in the UK or Shark Tank in the US. And I'm sure there's other names around the world for these shows where you go on and you pitch to almost celebrity investors, and you can see in a lot of those clips that the investor, as soon as someone walks in, they're already judging the person. They've already seen the product as maybe a stand. They're judging the branding. They're judging everything, and then it's almost an uphill struggle if the branding or the premise of the product is not exactly what they want. And sometimes, like you say, they look through the deck or they hear the pitch and then they start to invest and they start to come round. But actually, that immediate, like you say, 3 or 4 seconds, and it's the same for a website. The same when you meet a person in person. You
Yeah.
do judge so quickly, and I really like the idea of the psychology behind it. So, like you say, an investor is very much a real person, and they're just sitting looking at another pitch deck, right? So, what are some of the things you can do to sort of manipulate the psychology of what someone's looking at? Are there some things you can think about or talk to that are, more obvious than not or work better than not?
Yeah. So beyond the visual, because obviously getting that looking great is super important. Obviously more so for consumer-led brands. If you're pitching the idea that you can go and get millions of consumers to buy this product, then that branding is a key component of a entrepreneur's ability. So if you can't get that right, then that says a lot about what this business might become. But even in a B2B, an enterprise kind of scenario, brand is becoming more and more important, and it's that kind of leverage, that extra little bit of something that you've got that excites the investor. So super important for both camps. From a communication standpoint, I think I always kind of refer to the 5 acts of the perfect pitch, which is sort of a methodology we've created within the kind of wider proposition of becoming an investable entrepreneur. But when it comes specifically to the pitch, if you can think about delivering 5 key components in your pitch in the following order, it really has a massive effect. So the first is the big vision. What's your big vision? I call it the hook. What's your vision beyond making money? Then the essence. What's your value proposition? What's the problem you're solving, the solution you're offering? Why should this exist in the world? Then the evidence. What's some tangible evidence that suggests this is a goer? This is something the market wants, something the market needs. What's the plan of action? What's the strategic plan of action for your business? How are you going to take the money and turn that into a successful business that delivers me a return on my investment? And then an ask. How much do you need? What's the financial result of spending that money, and how much equity am I going to get as a result? So if you can do that, the hook, the essence, the evidence, the plan, and the ask, you've created a narrative there, like a story arc, like you get in a film. Because most of the best plays in history, Shakespeare was a massive fan of a 5-act play because it creates a lovely narrative and a lovely story. The ancient Greeks were the first to use a 5-act structure to their storytelling, to their playwriting. So psychologically, we've been delivered stories in this way for centuries. So if you deliver those components, and if you look at the definition of a 5-act structure in storytelling and you compare that to what I just said, you can see there's definite similarities, and you can use that kind of tried and tested formula that we're just psychologically used to structure the information you deliver in a way that just makes the investor feel comfortable with the information you're sharing. The first couple of acts are all about having an emotional connection. It's the vision, it's the essence, it's the evidence. The final couple of acts is the plan and the ask. It's about having a logical connection, speaking to the head. So if you can start to think about head and heart and these story structures within what you communicate, you can have a massive competitive advantage versus the 150 other pitch decks they see every single week in their inbox.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that you sort of have been able to break it down so clear and then relate it back to something that is so, ingrained in us. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah,
That's
it's
actually really cool because it's actually sounds simpler than it is as well, right? If everyone could do this, we would all be, super rich. But it's harder said than done, which is why we need people like you to help. But, you know, that's so interesting. And, I've heard you speak before and your book that you touched on there, The Investable Entrepreneur, it really demonstrates, and I've seen you write this on your in a few places as well, the frustration that you've seen or you have when founders aren't able to raise that capital and ideas aren't able to go from just being an idea on paper to actual implementation. And that's something that I think a lot of people must resonate with. If you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur and you know the struggle of I've got a great idea, I know I can do it, but I can't get it out there. It's the same thing for investment, right? That's what you've
yeah.
seen
I
countless
mean,
times.
that's why we do what we do and why we get out of bed in the morning. Like me and my co-founder Nick, we're ideas people. We love ideas. We come from brand and creativity and marketing, and that is a whole industry based on ideas. And my co-founder Nick, or the founder of the business. He's an artist, so it's, as well. He's kind of had a career in art and sold a lot of art to some wealthy individuals, and that's all about ideas. It's all about creativity. So we're passionate about ideas, and when we wanted to create Robot Mascot back in the day when it was a brand agency, we very much defined that our audience was someone who loved ideas. They were pioneers, they were innovators, and we call kind of in our brand guidelines the type of individual, the type of startup founder we work with is a pioneer. They're trying to. They're not just starting another business that's the run of the mill, same as everything else. They're trying to innovate, whether that be through process or through technology or whatever it may be. But they're trying to create something new and different and innovative in their space. They're the types of people we want to work with, and it just it's so frustrating to see all of these incredible ideas fail to raise investment when we know all it's down to is poor communication. If they could communicate their idea in a better way, they'd get the investment that they need. And there's so many startups out there or founders that are sitting there maybe in an incubator or an accelerator, and they see kind of someone else go and raise loads of funding, and you think their idea is nothing on mine. Why are they getting the money and not me? And normally it's just because they can tell a better story. It's not because their idea is any better. Ideas don't raise investment. Communication of that idea is the thing that closes the deal.
For sure, yeah. And so do you think you've had to become or learn or become a master of the art of persuasion as a part of what you're doing and in communicating that?
I would say there's definitely an element of if Robot Mascot were to ever fail, I could probably become a spin doctor for a politician. There's definitely an element of kind of looking at the data available about a particular business and how do we present that in the most positive light. What do we not say to make sure we get that meeting, and then how do we frame the conversation through the rest of the journey, through the business plan and the financials to demonstrate to an investor what we want them to see without, obviously we can't lie, there's regulation, you have to make sure they have all the facts, but presenting them in a certain way, highlighting certain ones over others is definitely a key part of the journey, and kind of making sure that your story comes through, and you're kind of talking about your business on your terms, about the things that matter to you, while also covering the things that investors want to know in a way that makes them excited. So yeah, there's definitely an art of persuasion. There's definitely kind of a bit of spin occasionally on some points, all done in a way that means that you're not lying. That's the most. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be real. I think the spin doctor analogy is probably a little bit too aggressive, but it's
Sure.
it gets the point across. It's just about making sure that it's presented in a way that's persuasive and gets the viewer, in this case the investor, to take some action and stick you above anyone else on that kind of shortlist.
Yeah, exactly. With your methodology there, you basically went over the fundamentals of investment and how you can get ready for it. So people that are listening to this and maybe don't understand if they should be looking for investment, what can you gain investment for, in your opinion? What do you see most of, or someone goes, or someone would benefit the most from taking investment on?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically anyone can raise investment for anything. It's about finding the right investor that aligns with that vision and that value proposition I talked about. So it doesn't matter whether you are starting up a new restaurant or a hotel, or whether you have, a new technology idea, whether you're doing something in AI, machine learning, deep tech, in space. Like who knows, right? Any business sector can raise investments. Some are more active than others, and some have more investors in them than others. But fundamentally, you need to approach investment as a stepping stone, a process. So a lot of founders, the mistake they make is, I need $5 million to get my idea off the ground. That will fund me for the next 3 to 4 years to get to the point where I can reach profitability, and then the business can self-fund itself from there. What you should really be doing is breaking that down into manageable chunks, because that de-risks the investment for the investor. You can take on some money, prove some points, and then take on some more money. And actually, longer term, it means that you retain more equity in your business as well. You actually sell less equity along the way. So the first kind of round, because that's that when you split up the investment required, they're known as rounds of investment. So the first round is usually, sometimes this is self-funded, but if you're bringing in external investment, that's usually to say, look, I've got a concept, I've done some hustling, and I've figured out what the market wants, what the market needs. I've done some surveys and focus groups, and I've got kind of an idea of what I need here. But I now need to quit my job. I need to focus on this full time, and I need to create the product, and I need to get my first handful of customers. And I need time to do that. I maybe need a small team to do that. Maybe I even need to invest in some technology to do that. So it's kind of, how much money do you need to get to that point, to get a very basic version of the product, not the full version, but just a basic version of your offer into the market with some beta users, some first customers, to prove that you can solve that problem, you can run a business, and you can generate a little bit of money from it. Then you can raise your next round of investment to say, right, well, I'm earning a couple of grand in revenues. I need to take this up to 80 grand a month in revenues. Because once I'm at 80k a month, that's essentially $1 million a year. So if I can get it to that point, then we've now transitioned from an early stage concept business into a more established business that would be deemed to have product market fit. You've got a product that the market wants, to the tune of being able to make $1 million a year. Once you've unlocked that milestone, you then raise your next round of investment, and that's to say, right, we're at $1 million. How do we get this to 10 million or 20 million? And then it keeps going. Like, we're at 20 million. How do we get it to 100 million? And now we need 20 million investment to make that happen, or whatever it may be. So it's usually like a few hundred grand on the lower end, 1 to 500 grand, then maybe 500 to 1.52 million, and then 2 to 5 million, and then maybe 5 to 20 million. And you go through those stepping stones, and you raise a little bit at a time to just prove that you can make these things happen. So rather than me gambling 5 million on you over the next 3 years, let me gamble 300k right now, get it to the point where you're earning 2 to 10 grand in revenue a month from the business as a result of my 300k. Now come back to me and ask for 1.5 million to get it from 20k a month to 80k a month, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's almost gated. You're gating the risk. I think that's really cool. That's obviously a reason they do that, right? So
yeah,
what you touched there upon the way that it currently works, and the misconceptions, I guess. What's the biggest common myth that you see in investment when people come to you? Do they? Because I think there's actually a stigma around investment, that it's scary. You know, you don't want to give your equity up. You think that there's going to be someone now sat on your board who's going to make decisions for you. Maybe some people think that's a good thing. Others are terrified of that. What's the biggest myth that you see that maybe people debunked, or maybe it's
maybe that's probably a good point to talk about. To be honest, I think that's absolutely a common concern. One, that they think investors are nasty because that's how they're portrayed on TV in Shark Tank and Dragon's Den and or whatever it may be, that they're ruthless. And yeah, of course they're ruthless business people, but ultimately they try to position themselves as the founder's friend. They're there to support and guide them, and they're busy, and they're not always going to get back to people that haven't put the effort in. You haven't done all the things we've talked about today, but if you put all the effort in, and they can see that you're really trying hard here with this business, and perhaps you're just not the right fit for them, or you're off by a couple of points, they'll often be there to support you. Certainly their portfolio companies, they're there to support and guide, often not take over. It's also key to say that when you're doing those first few rounds of investment, splitting this out and doing those first few rounds of investment, most people there are bringing on what I call smart money. So you're bringing in capital, but you're also bringing on board an advisor, a strategic partner, who can say, look, I've built a business like yours and exited it for hundreds of millions. I know the roadmap you need to go down, and I can be here to support and guide you through that. Or I've got a particular area of expertise in marketing to your audience, and I can lift and shift and explain to you this strategy we've used time and again to target and convert your audience, and we can apply that to your product. So you're bringing in this knowledge into the business, and that allows you to get to 10k a month to 80k a month within 12 months, so that you could go and raise your next round of investment. So often it's not a case that they're coming in to take over. They're coming in to support you because they love you, they love the vision, they love the value proposition, they want to be part of the journey. Now you're in control, right? They own maybe 15-20% of the business maximum. I wouldn't sell any more than that. Some of the deals you see on TV are the wrong deals. People are giving 50 or more percent of their company away. 20% maximum each round of investment. Make sure you're in control for most of the time. It's only when you really get to those big VC rounds and you're raising 20 million at sort of round 3, round 4 that you really need to start worrying about control. And by that point, it's a big business. There's lots of entities, and you probably have little control as the founder anyway. You've got CEOs and CFOs and directors kind of all getting involved by that point anyway, and it's a different beast. So I wouldn't worry too much. Obviously, do your due diligence on investors. There are some investors who are awful, and I would always advise founders to go and ask. If you can't find it out online, go and ask those prospective investors for some details on their portfolio companies, and then go and contact the founders of those portfolio companies and say, look, so-and-so's offered to invest in my business. Should I take it or not? And they might go, absolutely, best decision we ever made. Or they might go, don't touch it with a butt. They've been an absolute pain in the ass. Like, constantly wanting information every week. We end up on a call with them. They're always worried about where their money's going and what we're doing. We can't get on with anything because they're just constantly micromanaging us. So find out, they're doing their due diligence on you as a founder. You do your due diligence on them as an investor, and make sure that you're getting in a relationship with the right individual that meets your needs and is aligned to your vision.
So that's really interesting, because my next question, I wanted to talk about the different types of investment or investors, because I think a lot of people, we've touched on that they don't understand investment, and I think that some people won't understand, the different levels of you mentioned VC as private equity, and then there's angels. It'd be good to hear your point of view of what these different people are, and obviously they come in at different stages, but they're sort of who you should be looking at depending on maybe your business or your stage of business, I guess.
So the first place you should look, I think, is high net worth individuals. So they're not even necessarily officially investors. They're just high net worth individuals in your sector, in your space. They're the ones who are most likely to fund the concept stage of your business. If you think about Dragon's Den or something like that, if you think about the profile of all the investors on that TV show, they always end up saying yes to the deals that they understand the most. Deborah Meaden's always investing in the hospitality business. Peter Jones always investing in the tech and the telephone type businesses and the internet and technology businesses. They all have their area of expertise where they know they can add value, and they also understand the business well enough to make an informed decision on it. So the best thing you can do is go, this is my concept, this is what I want to achieve. Let's go and pitch to high net worth individuals in my space, C-level executives, directors, exited founders who have been operating in your sector for a long time, because they can bring contacts, knowledge, and money. Then you have professional angel investors at the next step up. And these are people that have decided that they're taking the step from maybe backing a couple of individuals that they love into a more professional portfolio, where they go, right, I'm going to make 10 investments a year. Of those, I know how many will fail. I'm trying to make the best strategic bet. This is about the return on investment, not just giving back to the next generation. So they're much more, they operate a bit more like a professional investment fund, but they're an angel investor. They're doing it with their own capital. They're a bit more professional about it. They probably get more deal flow because they promote themselves on LinkedIn or somewhere as an investor. So they're getting 100 pitch decks a week. Whereas the high net worth individual, it will be like, oh, wow, no one's ever asked me to invest before. Like, this sounds cool though. Like, let's chat. So these are more professional, high net worth individuals who are doing it for a financial gain more than anything else. Then you have early stage investment funds, venture capital funds, who are focused on early stage. So they basically pool the cash of angel investors or high net worth individuals and say, we're going to invest this on your behalf. And they invest in those early stage rounds, the first 1 to 2 rounds of investment. And then you have your classic venture capital fund. And these are high growth. You're normally already at $1 million in revenue before you pitch to these types of characters. They're a professional fund. They have $100 million fund, and they invest it into businesses writing checks of maybe 2 to 10 million. And they're a professional outfit. They do a load of due diligence. They've got a whole legal team and a finance team and a investment analyst team, and they all kind of work together to verify the deal. And they tend to get their money from hedge funds and from insurance companies or from pension funds, and they've promised their clients a return on their investment so that they can pay out their pensions from the pension fund. If they don't, they're screwed. So they're obviously looking at this from a very different perspective. It's high risk still, but they've got institutional clients that they're promised a return on investment from. So it's sort of quite a range. As you go through the first sort of 3 to 4 years of your startup funding journey, you're quickly moving from kind of the hobbyist high net worth individual to the very professional looking fund and that's where they have all the deal terms that founders are terrified of.
Sure. And also VC, they might put an entrepreneur in residence into your business, right? They might start to help you run it.
They might do that. They might have someone specifically on the board to help make decisions that has a certain level of voting rights. They might do something called preference shares, which a lot of founders are terrified of, which means you guarantee a return to the VC. So let's say you guarantee the VC is investing 5 million into your business, and you've guaranteed them a minimum 2x return. So they're definitely going to get 10 million back. You sell your company, the company doesn't do as well as you think, and you end up selling the company for 10 million. We have to pay back the preference shares of the VC you've promised a 2x return from. So you have to pay them their 10 million first, and you take what's left. I sold it for 10 million. There's nothing left. Yeah. So this can be worrying for a founder, but there's good reasons why VCs ask for that, and we've got a whole blog post on it. But that's not till later. And if you've got a good lawyer, you just need to get a good lawyer, right? Because they'll put these terms in, and you need to be able to get out of these terms or have and not be carried away by them. But having a good lawyer is on these deals is a fundamental when you get to that stage.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to understand the whole process all the way up to when you're investing in massive amounts.
Just to reassure your audience, like when you're talking to the high net worth individuals, the angel investors, they typically just end up with ordinary shares, just like you. There's no special voting rights. They have 20% of the company. You have 80%. You have all the decision making, everything. Just you have their cash as well.
You just answered my question. That's perfect. I was going to say to you, there's still a bit more to go, to be fair. So I was going to say to you, right, so, I've got a company. I've managed to bring on an angel investor that's slightly more professional than a high net worth individual. They've got, like you say, 5 to 10 investments a year. They invest, I don't know, $500,000. Is that realistic into my business?
Yeah.
What happens the next day or the next month? Just to make people's nerves at ease? What happens from there? You said they might give you a bit of advice.
This is why doing your due diligence is so important, because you could end up with an active investor who wants to have monthly meetings. You might have a monthly update sent their way. And as a side note, I'd recommend you do that anyway, regardless of the investor, because when you need their money later, it's always good for them to have seen the progress you've made with the money, with the first lot of money that they've invested. But they might be saying, like, contacting you every week or every month or every quarter for an update, and you should already have that agreement in place, and you should be doing those things. They might be an advisor on your board, so they might be at the end of the call, the end of a WhatsApp message, just going, I've got a problem. How do we do this? Or what would your advice be on that? And you might be able to have those conversations. Or they might be a completely passive investor that just says, look, I've invested in you. I've invested in this business. Here's my cash. I've got too much to do to worry about anything else. Just crack on. Give me a quarterly update, and we'll see where we are in 12 months' time. And you never hear from them again. you might hate,
So
you might
yeah,
love that idea, or you might hate that idea because you're like, but I've got all this money and I want to spend it in the right way and get the best return. I need someone with some experience to advise me. And you might want the active investor. So it's really important to just figure out who your investor is and what they're going to expect from you once they've deposited the cash in your bank.
yeah, it makes complete sense. And it's like you say, it's communication, isn't it? Like it's the
Yeah.
bread and butter
That's
communication.
it. It's just communication, just having a conversation with these people like they're an individual, like you're on the same page, you're at the same level, you're not treating them like some god or some demigod that you have to impress. Just two brilliant business minds talking about how to turn this amazing concept into a highly profitable reality. And it's just conversations with someone who's equally as qualified as you in most
Yeah.
cases. It's nothing more than that.
Yeah. I mean, so you and I have spoken very briefly before about what an investor would look in an actual entrepreneur. So we've spoken about obviously, the pitch decks, the branding, the elements that you have to do there, the financials. Is there anything that someone would look for in an actual entrepreneur, or something that an entrepreneur listening to this could start to do about themselves to try and make themselves more investable? Is that even something that we should be thinking about, or is it basically down to the pitch deck?
No, 100%. I mean, that's why my book's called Investable Entrepreneur and not Investable Business, right? It's about you as a founder. So ultimately, an investor's looking for two things. First, brilliant business idea with the caveat that that needs to be in a sizable market that could achieve huge growth. But the second thing they're looking for is an incredible founder who can execute on that vision. Because we can all have ideas, but only the best founders can execute on them, or can bring a team of people around them who also believe in that idea that want to execute on that vision. That's down to the entrepreneur to be highly resourceful, be able to pitch that vision and attract capital, attract people, talent, partnerships, all of those things to the table. So that's the first thing they're looking for. And usually they get a flavor of that through the pitch, right? The pitch kind of says, here's a highly resourceful entrepreneur. Here's someone who can pitch an amazing vision. I'm excited by it. If I can get excited by it, so can commercial partners, so can top talent. This is an incredible vision that we can all get excited by. Then they're looking for someone who understands the financial risks involved. You're not a blind optimist. You're not just sort of running around telling people, "Give me 500K. I'm going to turn that into 50 million in 3 years' time." Like, you have a financial plan, you have a financial vision. You know what you need to spend and when to make that happen. You understand the financial risks that are involved, and that's where your financial projections come in and really help you articulate that to the investor. And then the final thing they're looking for is obviously a founder who can execute an implementation strategy. They go, right, this is where my idea is now, and here's the stepping stones I need to take to get it from where it is today to where I need it to be tomorrow. Here's the short-term plan to get to our next funding round, and here's the longer-term plan that gets us to profitability and then to high growth, high scale, high returns. Like, this is the short and the long-term plan. And they know all of these things are going to change. Your numbers, your forecasts are going to change. Your strategic plan is going to change over time as you learn more about your market, what works, what doesn't work, more about your customers, more about your product. But that's not really the point. The point is to kind of say, I have a plan. I know what I need to do. And because I'm able to formulate a plan now, you can see how I think strategically. And therefore you can trust that when times are tough or things change or I learn something new about the market, we're going to make the right strategic decision for the benefit of this business so that you can get a return on your investment. So it's all about, these things we talk about, the things we produce at Robot Mascot, the business plan, the financials, the pitch materials. It's, yes, those documents are important, but it's what they say about the entrepreneur, what they say about their strategic insights, their ability to actually turn this vision into reality. That's what they're really investing in. That the things we create, they're just a tool to express that to an investor in a really clear and articulate way. But what they're really looking for is, who's the person behind that business plan? How do they think?
I find it all so interesting. I could talk about it all day. For those that would love to learn more, just specifically at this part here, James's book, The Investable Entrepreneur, we will put it in the show notes and the description below because it is well worth a read, isn't it? Well, I'm sure you're going to say yes, but I'm
Yes.
recommending it. I'm recommending it as well. It's a fantastic book. One of the questions I think some people will have listening to this, as we have a fairly global audience, is Is taking on investment the same in the UK where you are as it would be for me in Dubai, and other people listening in America, around the world? How is there any processes that are different?
Yeah, I think everything we talked about today is relevant wherever you are in the world. Like investors invest in people, not businesses. Investors invest in strategic individuals, not ideas. There's just a different balance of that across the world. So in Europe, where the UK is the main market, but across Europe we tend to find there's much more emphasis on the strategic planning and the financials, and people don't get quite so carried away with the vision as they do in the States, for example. So in Europe, 80% of our early stage investors are ex-finance people, ex-directors, ex-city bosses who ran banks or investment funds. So they come at it from spreadsheets and kind of budgeting perspective. Whereas in the States, you go to Silicon Valley, 80% of the investors in Silicon Valley are ex-entrepreneurs. So they're like, we know it's all bullshit. We know we just need to kind of invest in stuff and kind of roll with the punches and make it work. I like you. I like your vision. I know you're going to figure something out, even if it's not this. Here's some cash. And that's kind of there's a bit more to it than that. But that if we were to make the contrast, Europeans are much more conservative in their approach. Americans less conservative. There's a different sense of failure. Like in the UK, certainly, like it's a very British thing to be afraid of failure and to kind of try and not talk about your failures and almost try and reflect them as positives. Whereas in the States, it seems to be, oh, look, I've failed 10 businesses before, so this is definitely going to work because I've learned so much from the other. And everyone's like, yeah, how many failure badges have you got? The more failure badges you've got, the more likely you are to succeed the next time. And there's just a wholly different approach to the way that they see it. So there's just a different emphasis on these things that I've talked about today. And for those of you in Dubai, it's obviously locally you're probably going to find slightly more sort of conservative behind the numbers business planning, less kind of carried away by visions, probably slightly more European in their thinking, but you're probably also going to be looking at a more international market for investment, and you're going to be speaking to both European, UK based investors and probably US based investors, I would have thought as well. So having that in mind and making sure you've got all of these things in place. And that's the key, right? Is you give the investors this kind of almost this buffet of options. Here's my pitch, here's my financials, here's my business plan, like we've got all the detail there. And if you're vision focused, they just zoom in on the pitch and they talk to you about the vision. If they love to get in nitty gritty in the financials, they zoom in there and they start having good discussions with you there. Every investor has a slightly different background. Some come from a marketing background and they really want to go into your marketing strategy. Others come from a finance background and want to go into the forecast. Others come from a product background and want to delve into your product. You need to have all these things ready to have the right conversations with the investors that care about the things they care about.
I guess it goes back to what you said earlier about, the Dragon's Den analogy. If you walk into an, investor's den or whatever it is, a pitch, and they understand the industry straight away, you're more likely to get them on board in the same way as if they like marketing and your marketing's good, they're going to come more towards you.
Yeah, so you look at, I don't know how many of your audience watch Dragon's Den in the UK, but as they change the profile of the investors onto the show, you start to have very different conversations. So they recently brought on Stephen Bartlett, who has made loads of money in through sort of social media marketing and is much younger entrepreneur. So he zooms straight into, and how are we taking to this market using influencers and using social media? These were conversations that were never happening with a different panel where they were all kind of in their 60s. So the investor will zoom into the bit that they care about. Peter Jones always bang on the numbers. Like his ability on maths is incredible, and he's always there on the numbers and wants to know the numbers. He very rarely asks about their go-to-market or marketing strategy. He just wants to know the numbers. Every investor has their own kind of personal background and areas they feel comfortable talking about, and that's what they're using to make a decision on whether or not you're a good investment opportunity.
Yeah, and to the same point there, you actually see the businesses develop over time. If you watched it 15 years ago, it was very much inventions and sort of bricks and mortar. And now people do come in with apps and these, something that doesn't look very different. It might be a healthcare product. It doesn't look very different, but the branding's incredible. And then Stephen Bartlett's all over it because he's like, I know we could use this to market this way, and there's different routes to market. It's incredible
That's
to
it.
watch them think and learn.
Yeah, and you don't, you know, a lot of people, and this is a mistake that I think a lot of founders make, and I think some investors make as well, to be fair. Certainly these the high net worth individuals, the angel investors, this idea that you have to be first to market. You have to be trying to show that no one ever has done this before. This is completely unique and different. They're normally the ones that fail. The ones that succeed are normally the second, third, or fourth to market who have seen the failures happen and gone, well, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it this way. So actually, the idea of going, this has never been done before. It's the first to the market is kind of making it a really high risk proposition. Whereas you said, look, these people tried it and they failed because of these reasons, and because of that, our approach is this, and we've built this as a result, and therefore we're actually starting to see traction where someone else failed. And suddenly you've de-risked the investment opportunity and you've gone, we're doing exactly the same as these other guys, but we have this, and the other in addition to that, and that makes us more competitive. We'll be able to gain larger market share more quickly, and we'll quickly become a competitor to this incumbent, and we'll wipe them off the face of the map.
Hearing you say that immediately makes me think of Facebook in the early days, where they were not the first sort of platform on the internet where you could do things, but they were the first ones to really bring community together. And then Threads more recently. That is not a new idea, but they've done it in a different way. And they've made that path of least resistance so easy from Instagram to Threads.
Yeah.
It's so obvious to see, right?
That's it. And yeah, Facebook, I think before that it was what, MySpace, Bebo,
Yeah.
all sorts of platforms, but it was just Facebook who were able to take the best bits from those platforms and kind of bring them together in something that with a user interface that people really actually engaged with much more, and it got that momentum that it needed. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people wanting to be, even now trying to create the next Facebook. I think that boat's well and truly sailed. Like there's a point at which someone becomes so dominant in a market, you can't use the argument of here's where they failed. Like we're going to succeed in this way. But for most startups, you're trying to de-risk this, and you can de-risk it by kind of going, here's some examples of where people have done well or failed that we're going to leverage for our own success.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Rightly so, we've spoken a lot about investment, James, which is perfect. I really want to touch on you a bit more. You've had a really interesting story, and my question really is, what's the most important lesson you think you've learned in your career so far that's really brought you forward?
Or from a business perspective, I think really understanding the power of sales and marketing. So without lead generation, without a repeatable sales funnel, you don't really have a business. You have a team of people who are really good at executing on something, or you have a really good piece of technology, but if no one's going to use it, no one's going to access it, then it's worthless. So the only, everything's downstream of leads and sales and marketing, and I think a lot of businesses try and outsource that too soon, and they go, I'm not a salesperson, I'm just the founder of the business, and they ultimately fail because they're not willing to get their hands dirty on sales. Like no one can sell your business better than you, the founder. And the biggest challenge, you can relinquish everything else, all of the delivery, all of the operations, everything. The last thing that should go is the sales, because that should be with the founder until the point where it can't be anymore because you're too big. And then you need to find a way to transition that over. That's the hardest part of business. And I think realizing that and the power that has, that without sales you have no business, was one of the biggest learning curves for me, I think. Because once we nailed that, our business just flew. Exactly the
Sure,
same
yeah.
product, same team, but as soon as we nailed that piece, our business just went flying.
Just articulated the value more clearly. Communication again, isn't it? It's a common
It
theme.
wasn't even that. I think we didn't need to articulate the value anymore. We were doing a good job at converting the sales. We weren't getting enough leads. If you don't get enough leads, you can't make enough sales. So if you can't get a repeatable sales and marketing strategy that allows you to sell at scale, then you're never going to grow as a business, and it's really hard to do. But once you figure it out, you kind of get to a point, we're still not there yet, but eventually you get to a point where you can print money because, you know, for every £1 I put into my marketing funnel, I get £100 back or dollars back. It's kind of a
Yeah.
license to print money, isn't it, once you're at that point? So that's always the holy
Yeah,
grail.
I mean,
Um,
exactly. That's what everyone's searching for, isn't it? Yeah, the
yeah.
holy grail. I like it. So in the business, the size of it is it the size of the business now? And obviously, like you say, you're touching founders and entrepreneurs that are looking for a massive amount of money. So there's obviously a lot of pressure on what you do. How do you what are your coping mechanisms for pressure?
Yeah, that's a good one. Probably very badly, to be honest. But I think, you know, for me, it's always been I work really hard during the week, and if I need to work late, I work late, and I'm just you know, I've got a very kind of focused mind, and I kind of hyper focus on stuff, and I just want to get it done, and I can't kind of rest until that's just gone and out of the door. Um, but
Yeah.
I've got very good at making sure I'm available for the kids between sort of tea time and bedtime. And then if I need to go back to work, I'll go back to work, and making sure I always take the weekend off. I never work a Saturday or a Sunday, always spend that with the family. And that's been since day one. That's never changed throughout the 10 years we've been running this business. So I think for me, that's how I de-stress. I make sure that I work really hard 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, and then keep a time aside in the evenings and the full weekends to just decompress, be with the kids, and yeah, just a smile and a giggle from them is enough to make all of your worries go away, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about productivity and delegation? So you've got a fairly big team, and to keep
Yeah.
yourself productive throughout the week and make sure you have that time with your kids.
Mm.
What are your tips, or how do you keep yourself accountable and
Yeah,
productive throughout that week?
I think the biggest so productivity is a good one. That this can work whether you've got a co-founding partner or just a team, but something we do, and this came from our growth mentor, is a 3 to 6 list. So every week you get together as a team and you go, what are 3 to 6 things I'm going to do outside of my day-to-day role that are going to drive the business forward? I'm going to template this. I'm going to create an asset for that. I'm going to relook at this process, or whatever it may be. I'm going to do what 3 to 6 things am I going to do to drive the business forward? And when you share that, and if you're a solopreneur, share it with your partner, with a friend, ask for a friend if they can be your accountability partner. But there's something about writing that down and sharing it with someone else or a group of people, because we're social creatures and we're brought up like if me and you were living in a cave as cavemen and I said I'm going to go out and find us some food, you sit back and look after everything. Like that's my responsibility now. And if I don't do that, you don't eat. And as
Mm.
we've been brought up, are psychologically kind of brought up in that way that you don't let your team down. Like if I said I was going to go find some berries, I better find some berries because that was my job. So as soon as you say these are the 3 things I'm going to do this week, if you say it to yourself in your head, you'll just go, "Oh, I'll do those next week." But if you say it out loud to someone else, suddenly psychologically you're much more likely to get those things done. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing on productivity, just start making a list of everything that you do during the week where you think someone else could do this. And then start hiring virtual marketing assistants, virtual PAs, and giving them little job lists to do. Just build that up over time because you can quite quickly leverage a huge amount of time by taking a lot of the admin tasks out of your day and giving them to a virtual PA or a virtual marketing assistant who can do them at an hourly rate, a fraction of your own as the founder of the company. And that gives you more time to leverage on those high value tasks like doing the sales calls and those types of things that keep the business going. So yeah, they would be my 2 tips.
Yeah, that second one as well with delegation, I think is so important because we've all got the things that we like to do. You know, as you know, humans have these sort of geniuses, as Roger Hamilton would say, and you've got the things that you like, maybe it's ideas or you like systems, maybe you're introvert, extrovert, and being able to delegate the things that maybe you don't need to do, but also you don't like to do in some cases, as long as it's not the sales and the bits you need to be there for, like you
Yeah,
say, that can actually have a massively positive impact on your personality, I think. If you
yeah,
get rid of the stuff you really don't like the admin bits you really don't want to do,
yeah. It's the
it's
stuff
really
you don't
powerful.
like and the stuff that doesn't have a massive strategic downside if someone was to sort of do it wrong. And you want to be able to create processes and kind of do a screen share of kind of this is how I do it, but it should be kind of admin tasks, not two big things in business, right? One, the delivery of the product, because that needs to be good to keep your reputation, and two, the sales. They're the two final things. Everything else, finance, admin, even onboarding a client, that can all be outsourced to someone else. And then you get a really good delivery team that you train up in your approach, and then you eventually get a really good sales team that you train up to be able to sell the product. But they're the last two things to go, is delivery and operations. Everything else is just noise. So delivery and sales is yours. Everything else is just noise. You can get an admin assistant to do that for a few dollars an hour.
Yeah, perfect. James, I want to ask you something that I've asked everyone so far, and it's a book recommendation. I'd love a book recommendation from
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna be cheeky. I'm gonna recommend two, but they're both by the same author, so hopefully that's allowed. So
That's fine.
yeah, so it's Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley and Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley. So these are two books that have absolutely transformed my life as an entrepreneur and our business. Once we learn and properly applied the strategies in those books, our business grew 300% in the first year, after 200% the year after that, and it continues to grow. So those two books are absolutely critical. One thing I would say about books is they're great, but when you find a blueprint that you think that resonates with you, just focus on that one, because you can overload yourself by going, oh, and this person says this and this, and you try and mash them all together to create the ultimate strategy, and then you kind of don't do any of it well. So trying to find one that resonates with you, and this one really resonated with me, and just focus on it, and then start reading again and kind of go, right, now how can we learn from other people once we've got this one in place? How can we leverage that and how can we build that? That's how I've found, because otherwise you get overwhelmed of ideas and strategies. But yeah, those two, absolute killers.
Yeah, great books, both of those. And that's a really, really good point to bring up, actually, I think, because, picking one mentor, because there's so many strategies, strategy is usually not the issue. It's picking a mentor and following their path. And I think Alex Hormozy said pretty recently, he's far more impressed by someone that's read 3 books in a year and implemented everything than someone who's read 100 and can't remember anything out of them. There's no point in just counting up the tally of books you've read if you haven't implemented and made that change.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make you a successful entrepreneur to have a reading list of 100 books.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
And the other question, sorry, did you say something?
I would say execution's where it's at. Execution's the key, and you can only execute so much in any given time. So you need to really focus on, once you find something you read that resonates with you and you think this would work for me, just go all in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, great advice. The other question I've got that I've asked everyone is, if you had a full free day, what would you do?
Full free. So I mean, for me, like every free moment I have is to spend it with my family, spend it with my kids. They're only young once. They're sort of 2 and 5, and they grow up quick, right? And I've got time when they leave home to do other things. But for now, it's like every spare moment I have is to spend it with them before it's too late.
Oh, that's awesome. How can people find you, James? I've already said we'll have the book in the show notes below. What's the best way people can get in touch with you or see more of your work?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search James Church, I should come up. You can go to pitchready.co.uk. There's a quiz there where you can sort of test your investor readiness. You can see how pitch ready you are and get a score and a report. Then it offers you a load of goodies after that, like some free strategy sessions and that kind of thing. So yeah, pitchready.co.uk is a great way to just start exploring whether or not raising investment's right for you and whether you're ready to start thinking about that.
Perfect. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, and I hope to catch you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Freddie. It's been amazing. Thanks for having me.